All right, welcome to Husker Storm Blog. This is week 7 of college football, more than halfway through the season, and that means the BCS standings are coming out this week, which is going to be interesting. I think they're going to look completely different than the polls in the top 10. Teams like Oregon State going to find themselves higher in the BCS standings, and the computers especially, than they will in the polls. And Notre Dame's probably going to find themselves really high too, and deservedly so. Let's go ahead and get started. Since it's week 7, I'll be talking about my BCS bowl projections, my top 25, my top 3 Heisman. So let's, look at week 7. We're going to start off with Nebraska. So if you don't want to hear about Nebraska, I'd say skip about 8 minutes forward, and then we'll be talking about the other games that happened. So the Nebraska game was a typical Nebraska road game under Pelini. And it was, like I predicted, a loss and a shootout. But it was higher scoring than I predicted. I thought Nebraska had maybe turned the corner, and they were going to play better in these road games and get past those blowouts and meltdowns in the second half. And, that didn't happen, and Bo's seat is getting hotter. This year, if I am, I'm not sure how you pronounce the new athletic director's name, Sean Hoist, whatever. If I'm him, right now I'm looking at potential hires. Who could replace Bo? If this team doesn't get a Rose Bowl, I'm replacing Bo Pelini. I'm replacing him. The Big Ten's really bad this year, and Nebraska's joining their terribleness. They've got a chance to get out there and win the Big Ten, and they're just stinking it up. Like, if they would have lost this game like I predicted, I wouldn't have had a huge problem with it. But they allowed 63 points, and I have a huge problem with that. Bo's so-called expertise was irrelevant. I mean, it was not. For about a quarter, it was. So, if I'm Eckhurst, I'm Hoist, whatever, the new athletic director that's replacing Tom Osborne, I am looking at potential hires like Chris Peterson. I wouldn't mind that guy coming here. He does a good job of working with football players. He turned, bad recruits, 2 stars and 3 stars into first and second round defensive lineman recruits. They had like 3 defensive linemen recruited in the first 2 rounds. It might have been just the first round. I can't remember exactly. I know they had a couple in the first round, and then there was like another one like in the second or third round. I mean, he's done a marvelous job there, and Nebraska's going to have to fork out the money. They forked out the money for this AD. Now it's time to fork out the money for a guy who's actually coached a team, not a defensive coordinator who has no experience recruiting as a head coach, being a CEO as a head coach, and running a football team as a head coach. He just had no experience of that, and then you try to get him to run it as a major university. This is Tom Osborne's downfall as an AD. He did do a great job with the basketball program. It looks like it's on the turnaround. They got a new stadium, but he hired Bo Pelini and Ben Cotton, 2 of the worst hires. I mean, they're arguably just as bad as Callahan. Okay, Bo Pelini's not as bad as Callahan, but this Bo Pelini team, at least Callahan, he was an offensive guru. He's an offensive line coach who's in the NFL, and he produced great offensive line play. Pelini, he's a defensive guy, and his defense has been pretty weak. So let's talk about this game. The offense came out slow, the defense came out fast, and they played well. But sorry about that. If Nebraska would have came out quicker, and they could have really punched Ohio State in the mouth. But I said in my video that in order for Nebraska to have success, they needed to spread it out. That exposes the secondary and the linebackers of Ohio State. They struggle with tackling in space. They struggle against run teams that spread them out. I mean, if you look at the Michigan State game, they'd play pretty well against pro-style I-form run teams that get their quarterback under shotgun and they try to run downhill between the tackles. And that's what Nebraska tried to do for the first 2 drives. They come in I form and they're predictable. 2 runs and then it's a 3rd and 9 and they had to pass it. If they would have came out and spread them out, I believe they would have scored on the first 2 drives, or at least on one of them, and the game could have been 28-7 or something like that. And Nebraska could have really pushed, really suffocated Ohio State early. But then Taylor Martinez throws a pick 6 on a 3rd and 9, a poor decision. The guy was covered, but Tembeck put him in that decision, and the offensive line put him in that decision. He was pressured. It was good defense. I don't think Taylor Martinez can throw those comeback passes. I'm sorry, not a 10-yard comeback pass from Taylor Martinez. He doesn't have the arm strength. And Nebraska came out loading the box defensively. They brought blitzes from places that Ohio State didn't expect. Ohio State's offensive line was awful, and the D-line played contain on Miller in the first quarter. Miller had -9 rushing yards and like 8 yards passing. And, the Buckeyes really struggled. They had a bunch of 3-and-outs, and then the Buckeyes decided to go for it, a fake punt, and Nebraska gets the ball, and Nebraska kicks a field goal. That was a momentum changer. Nebraska scores a touchdown there. It's 21-7, and you're really putting the pressure on the Buckeyes. But instead, they get all the way down to the 5-yard line, and they're forced to kick a field goal. That was unacceptable there. Besides that point right there, Nebraska played pretty well in the first quarter, all around. And they were up 17-7. They scored 17 unanswered, and Braxton Miller was, contained. And then he broke out. He had a huge run, and that shaped the game. He exposed Nebraska's lack of speed at the linebacker level. And even though Braxton Miller was caught from behind, which surprised me, Sanante Evans is pretty fast. And they scored 28 points in the second half. Nebraska did not stop them on a single drive. I don't know what happened, if the Buckeyes just turned on some switch or something. I know the Buckeyes have struggled in the first half, or if Nebraska slightly changed up their scheme or something. I think it was a combination of both. Nebraska came out playing well defensively, and Ohio State did make some adjustments. Ohio State is a bad first quarter team offensively, and they've been all year. And Nebraska could not hold them down for more than a quarter. And, the first drive of the second half, Nebraska needed to come out and make a statement, and they did. Taylor Martinez, first pass of the second half was terrible, almost interception. Oh, no, it was overthrown, but he had pressure right in his face, of course. This offensive line is coached by Barney Cotton. And then he throws a great pass, and another great pass, and a couple more great passes. And just like that, Nebraska scored. He has a pump fake, tosses it into Ben Cotton, and it's a 4-point game. And just like that, the Huskers are right back in this one. And then the defense took the field, and Braxton Miller put them back up by 11. And on Nebraska's kick return, just like the whole entire game, the special teams is terrible for Nebraska. Els needs to be fired with Cotton, Pelini. Fire them. Els and Cotton and Pelini are terrible. I mean, the special teams kick return blocking is terrible. Nebraska they had one return that they got the ball to maybe the 20, and it was brought back because Amani Cross had a block in the back and a holding. And Nebraska was consistently backed up because of that. They'd start from the 15 and 20 at the most. And that, to force your offense to move 85 yards against a talented, now they're not playing well, but a talented Buckeyes defense is not easy. And then they went 3-and-out. And I believe there's a couple penalties on that drive, like always, false starts and crap from Quayle, whatever that kid's name is. He had a couple of false starts. I mean, if you're gonna false start, you don't belong in my starting offensive line. And then the special teams was exposed again. A punt return for a touchdown by Ohio State changed the game. Just like that, they have an 18-point lead. and that was pretty much it. The game was over. Nebraska, they gave up 21 points by their offense. 21 points by their offense. That's unacceptable. You know, a pick six. They set the Buckeyes up. It was actually 28 points. It was a pick six, 2 interceptions, which one of them was returned for a touchdown, which was a pick six. One interception set them up about the 25, and then a fumble set them up about a 25. So that's 20. That's 21 points given up by your offense, and then 7 points given up by your special team. So that's 28 points the Buckeyes should have been without. But Nebraska continues to beat themselves on the road. I mean, Ohio State won this game. Don't take it wrong, Ohio State fans. You guys won this game. But Nebraska, you know, they beat themselves on the road with mistakes and penalties, and they played themselves out of games. The defense cracked yet again, and so did Taylor Martinez. He's been awful on the road. Burkhead left the game in the first drive after he broke a nice run. He left the game and re-injured his knee. They say it's not long-term. Hopefully it's not. We didn't even have him for the second half. We managed to score 14 points in the second half. We played okay offensively compared to what we had been on the road in the second half. And then Taylor Martinez reverted to his old self with a line your feet up parallel to the offensive line. Let's point your toes at the line of scrimmage and throw a shot. And you know, Taylor Martinez demonstrated that is not how you throw a football on that throw. I expect better things from this team in what is this sixth year of Pelini's program? 5th year. Than a team that is struggling to win on the road. I mean, to even compete on the road, to tell you the truth. They just melted away. It's like they're a bunch of freshmen out there, but they're not. You got a junior at quarterback. And the defense sucks. The offense beats itself with penalties. 9 penalties. I believe 7 of them were on the offense. 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, a fumble. All on Martinez there. And the bad thing about those turnovers, 1 came in the red zone. 3 set the Buckeyes up just outside the red zone. Well, 1 of those 3 was a touchdown. So, can't beat yourself, especially in your 5th year as a program. And in your junior year as a quarterback, you should be playing better than this on the road. Nebraska can still turn this year around and get to the Big Ten Championship and the Rose Bowl. But I sure as heck do not want to see Nebraska play Oregon. I'd feel more comfortable playing USC since I don't think they're that great of a team. But Oregon would whoop us. They might score 80. No, they might, really. So, Michigan's got to come to Nebraska. Nebraska's got 2 key road games at Michigan State, Northwestern. They should win Penn State, Minnesota, and Iowa. But this team has, maybe their loss to an unranked team was UCLA. Maybe. We'll see. They have the potential of losing to one of those 3 teams. Who knows? But you should be able to beat Michigan State and Northwestern on the road. Michigan's the key game. Dual threat quarterback Denard Robinson has not played well on the road, even though they did play well against Purdue. He always plays well against Purdue. But he doesn't play well on the road against, in big venues against solid teams. That's going to be a shootout, and we'll see what happens there. That's going to decide the legends. But let's get to talking about some real football. So South Carolina laid a whooping on Georgia, 35-7. Connor Shaw was efficient, not great. They didn't ask him to be great, but he did what he had to through 2 touchdown passes, a couple of balls that they weren't very good throws, but his wide receivers made plays. Just like I said, Georgia has a suspect defense. South Carolina has a good defense. Georgia may have a good offense. I said it was going to be a close game, but if anybody blew anybody out, it'd be South Carolina. And they beat the tar out of Georgia. Georgia just looked flat. I mean, I think South Carolina's really good. Florida, they upset LSU like I predicted. Their defense was great. And Florida State, yet again, fell to NC State. That's 3 straight times that they've traveled to NC State and lost. And about, what was it? In 1998 or something like that, they were the 5th ranked team, and they traveled to NC State, and they lost. So they continue to not get over the hump, and their offense wasn't very good. And even with all the injuries that NC State had on their offensive line, they still played really well, came through. I'm sorry, but the Seminoles are far from back. They're not close to back. If they can't go undefeated in the ACC, I don't know what to say. The ACC is really, really weak. Really weak. I mean, really weak. I mean, a team that might represent one of their divisions in the championship game just lost by 38 points to Notre Dame on the road, that being Miami. And that team also lost to Kansas State by, 52-13, so that's 39 points? I mean, so they've been outscored like 90-16 or something stupid against ranked teams. It's an awful conference. That is worse than the Big Ten. I'm sorry. They are worse than the Big Ten. They may have two teams that are top 20 teams, but besides that, they're a load of crap. I'm sorry, but Jimbo Fisher can truly recruit. He's a great recruiter, a lot like Bill Callahan at Nebraska. But can he coach? That's my question. They always have a good defense, but their offense is just inconsistent. I thought they were for real this year, and I bit into the bait. Maybe they're a year away. We'll see. They got some young running backs, still pretty young offensive line. But I'm not under the impression that Jimbo Fisher can win as a college football coach. Notre Dame, 3 straight games without a touchdown. Denard Robinson is back as they beat Purdue. Geno pulls out another one with a win over Texas in a shootout, of course. Oregon rolled the Huskies. UCLA was awful on the road as Cal crushed the Bruins. Overtime, and Stanford scored 54 points against U of A. USC came out slow but fought through the adversity. And TCU's defense is not the same as the Cyclones lit them up. Kansas State won the Sunflower State over the pathetic Kansas team. I mean, really pathetic Kansas team. They made Colin Klein look fast. So that was pretty much wrap-up of that week. Michigan State came back against Indiana. Wisconsin won. What else do we have? Oklahoma did not get upset by Texas Tech like I thought. They actually routed Texas Tech, and they look like maybe they're back. Not back. Maybe they can compete for a Big 12 championship. And really, besides that, that's pretty much it. Oregon State won again. I went 8-3 in my predictions. I missed on 3 of my upsets. I did get the South Carolina one right. I did get Florida one right, but I missed on my Purdue beating Michigan. That was pretty bad. I missed on Texas Tech beating Oklahoma, and I missed on one other one. What was that one? I can't remember which one that was. But besides that, I went 8-3. But let's talk about my top 25. Interesting. How high do I have my SEC teams? I'll have to take a look. I never realized how hard top 25s are to compose, how to make, put together, especially right now. I mean, 10 through 25 or 10 through 20 could really be switched around, and 20 through 25 aren't going to be here at the end of the season. So I've got Bama at 1, obviously. Now, number 2 is an interesting one. I think South Carolina is number 2 team in the country. Why? Oregon's only win was against a U of A team that has 3 losses. South Carolina destroyed a Georgia team that has a heck of a lot more talent than U of A and was a top 10 team. They're better than Oregon right now. If you look at their schedule and what they've done, they're better than Oregon. Now, at the end of the day, at the end of this year, they're going to be a top 10 team, but they've got to go to LSU, they've got to go to Alabama, and then they have to play Florida at home, and if they make it to the SEC championship game, potentially play Alabama again. Number 3, I've got Florida. Defense. Defense wins championships, and I believe South Carolina, Florida, and Bama have the ability to shut down Oregon's run game. And I have Oregon at 4. But, 2, 3, and 4, they might not be the same this next week. If South Carolina can't beat LSU on the road, if Florida comes out flat against Vanderbilt and loses, Oregon could very easily get to 2 with a bye. Number 5, I've got Notre Dame. This team, sorry about that. This team can go. I'm buying into the hype now. Yeah, they beat a crappy Miami team, but they sure as heck can win enough games to get to BCS. They're playing defense, and they get Stanford this week. We'll see how that goes. I think they're going to win that one, and it might be impressive again. They could win that one like 20-6. We'll see. I'm not sure what my prediction is yet. But I've got Notre Dame at 5. 6, I've got West Virginia. The offense is good. The defense is still suspect. Kansas State at 7. But I'm not a fan of Kansas State. I'm sorry. We'll see when they finally play a real team. I've got Ohio State at 8. Ohio State, the only game that they're really going to be able to prove themselves anymore for the rest of the year is Michigan. So Ohio State probably doesn't get any higher than 6th on my poll. I can't put them past a 1-loss team, because they're on probation. They're not. They could very easily go 12-0 now, because I think Nebraska might have been the best team on their schedule this year. Maybe Michigan's better than Nebraska. We'll have to see. Let's see if Michigan can turn it around. I've got Oregon State at number 10. Is that right? Number 10? Yeah. No, Oregon State at number 9. They are playing defense, and they're playing it well. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, they're at 9. And if they can play defense like this against Oregon, they'll keep themselves in that game in Eugene. They played really good run defense. We'll see if they can keep it up. They're at number 9 in my polls just because of their victories. LSU's at number 10 because they haven't beat anybody, and the only person they played they just lost to, and their offense is abysmal. They can't run the ball. Zach Mettenberger can't throw the ball. USC, I've got them at 11. Their defense is not very good. Their defense is not good at all. And Matt Barkley doesn't look like a Heisman candidate right now. I mean, he played well he played very good against Utah, but I don't know if they can hold up in the Pac-12. I've got Florida State at, 12? Which might be high for Florida State. They're going to have trouble moving up a whole lot, especially with the BCS coming out, because the ACC is awful. Oklahoma at 15, Georgia at 16, Stanford at 17, Texas, I had USC was 11, so Florida State's 12, Oklahoma is 13, 14 is Georgia, 15 Stanford, 16 Texas, 17 Clemson, 18 Rutgers, 19 Cincy, 20 Mississippi State, they won't be in here very long. Louisville, 21, they won't be in here very long. Michigan, 22, they could be on the way up. 23, Texas A&M, they won't be in here very long. I wasn't impressed with their road trip to Ole Miss. They could lose 4 games this year, considering they haven't played well in their only road game. They got to play Louisiana Tech, so one of them, Louisiana Tech or A&M, will fall out because I've got Ohio at 24 and Louisiana Tech at 25. If Louisiana Tech can beat A&M, they could go undefeated this year. Ohio, I don't see going undefeated. The MAC is a lot stronger than, the Sun Belt? No, Louisiana Tech doesn't play in the Sun Belt. I'm not even sure what Louisiana Tech plays in. But Louisiana Tech probably will go undefeated if they can beat Texas A&M. My Heisman, coming up, I've got Geno Smith at 1. I've got Braxton Miller at 2 and Monte Teo at 3. Now, we still got 6 weeks to go. But if the Buckeyes go undefeated, don't be surprised if Heisman winner is Braxton Miller. Now, if Geno Smith can win the Big 12, don't be surprised if he's holding up the Heisman. Or if Monte Te'o, I like the kid. He's really good. Gone through a lot. Plays well. Best linebacker in the country. Maybe the best defensive player in the country. Jarvis Jones wasn't a lot of people's Heisman, but after he wasn't really there in the South Carolina game, he won't be in there anymore. But we'll see how Monte Te'o can do. It's tough for a defensive player to win it, but if Notre Dame goes undefeated, how could he not? Next, we'll talk about my BCS bowl predictions. I've got to be determined in the Rose Bowl versus USC. Now, to be determined because who's going to win the Big Ten? I mean, the best team is on probation in Ohio State. And I believe the second best teams are either Nebraska or Michigan. Michigan State's a far third. Purdue's a far third, too. Purdue's probably going to make it if Wisconsin doesn't beat them on the road. But really, I don't even know. I have no idea who's going to win. I don't even know what to say for the Big Ten. It's just a mess. Now, the Rose Bowl, I've got USC because I see a lot of teams. I think there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 5 teams from the SEC that are BCS. Like, they'll be in the top 15 or top, what is it? You have to be in the top 14 or something like that to be BCS eligible. I think there's going to be 4 of those teams in there. But the SEC can only have 2, and they're going to meet that 2. So USC at 9-3, they'll be a top 15 team or whatever it is that they have to be. If they're 9-3, they'll probably find themselves in that game. The Fiesta Bowl, West Virginia versus Notre Dame. I think West Virginia wins the Big 12. I think Notre Dame falls once and plays in the Fiesta Bowl. The Sugar Bowl, I've got Florida versus K-State. I think Florida gets in because South Carolina plays in the SEC championship and loses. Or Georgia plays in the SEC championship and loses, and South Carolina ends up going 10-2, and Florida ends up going 11-1 with their only loss against South Carolina or Georgia. The Orange Bowl, which I have K-State going 11-1, 10-2, something like that, enough to get into that game. The Orange Bowl, I've got Florida State winning the ACC versus Rutgers. That's a terrible game. I'm sorry. The ACC is bad. Florida State isn't as good as we thought, and the Big East isn't that good either. And although I think Rutgers is the best team, that game's going to be low ratings, I can tell you that. The national title, Alabama versus Oregon. USC didn't do anything to think that they can beat Oregon. Do I think Oregon's that great? I don't think this offense is as good as it has been. Now, their defense is probably better than it has been, but they're going to get tested against Stanford, USC, ASU, Oregon State, and the Pac-12 championship game. I think they come out unscathed, but they could fall in one of those. Now, the national title, I got Alabama. I think they're going to go undefeated. LSU has not looked very good. That's their toughest road game. I mean, their toughest game might be South Carolina, but they play South Carolina at home, so I'll take Alabama in that one. But that's my BCS Bowl predictions or projections right now. It could change, and we could potentially be on our way to another SEC versus SEC matchup, which would be disappointing, but I think the SEC has the 3 best teams in college football. And now we'll look at my Week 7 picks. All right, welcome back. We've got our Week 7 prediction video here. I am a little sick, so don't mind that. I'll try to get this one through without my nose running. All right, so let's get started. We've got Loads of good games this week. Louisville at Pitt is the first one I'm going to predict. Louisville has not played well on the road. They played at FIU, they played at Southern Miss, and they struggled. They struggled, to say the least, against teams that are, I believe, a combined 1-9 or 1-10. Two very pathetic teams. I think they struggle on the road against Pitt, and I think Pitt gets the upset here. Pitt didn't play well against Syracuse. They lost for the first time in like 9 years. Pitt did upset a pretty weak Virginia Tech team who's already got 3 losses. But I don't like this young Louisville team on the road here. That being said, Louisville loses this one, 24-23. Pitt gets it done. Texas at Oklahoma, the Red River rivalry. These games are always close, no matter who's on the field. Sorry about that. You know, when you got a crappy Oklahoma and a good Texas, it's a good game. When you ever got a good Oklahoma and a crappy Texas, it's always a good game. So you know what you're going to get here is a good one, and I think Oklahoma's finally putting it together. Landry Jones may be putting it together. If they don't put it together here, this team could lose three or four games this year. They did defeat a Texas Tech team that I did predict to upset them last week. I like them to win this one, as the Longhorns did get defeated by Geno Smith at home last week. I'll take Oklahoma. Neutral site for this game, 27-21. Oklahoma takes this one. Oregon State at BYU. Sean Mannion out indefinitely. Now they got to go to their backup. Riley Nielsen back on the field after BYU's quarterback is out for the rest of the year. Defense. That's what's going to be here. I think the Beavers aren't going to be able to keep this winning up, and this is going to be their first loss as Mike Riley is playing good football. Has his team playing good football, but not here. 13-10. BYU gets it done. Stanford at Notre Dame. If you want some offense, look somewhere else. I can tell you one thing's for sure. Stanford will not score 54. This is not Arizona's defense. Notre Dame's got the best defense outside of Tuscaloosa. Maybe not as good as South Carolina's. Maybe not as good as Florida's or LSU's. But it's a top 5 defense. It might be better than those defenses. I'm not sure. But they've held 3 opponents without touchdowns: Miami, Michigan, and Michigan State. Those aren't FCS schools. Yeah, those offenses aren't elite, but those aren't crap teams. I'm going to take Notre Dame getting their 4th straight opponent without a touchdown. 17-12, Notre Dame does it again. TCU at Baylor. The Horned Frogs lost Casey Packall for the rest of the year as he will go to rehab, having some issues with marijuana. They played awfully bad defensively. Not the same TCU defensively that they have been. They weren't good last year defensively, and they haven't been good since the Rose Bowl win against Wisconsin defensively. Now with Packall out, I like Baylor to win this one. It's going to be pretty easy for them, 49-31. Baylor takes it. USC at Washington. Can the Huskies upset USC for the 3rd time in, I believe, in 4 years? They got smoked last year. Keith Price hasn't played one of the big games. I don't think he plays super well in this one either. Matt Barkley does enough against an improved Washington defense, 27-17. South Carolina at LSU. The Gamecocks continue to impress while LSU has a sinking ship, especially offensively. They haven't found any playmakers on defense, and they haven't found any playmakers in their special teams game. I like the Gamecocks. They're a better all-around team. They're going to lose one of their 2 games. It's either going to be LSU or Florida, both on the road at Death Valley and at the Swamp. I think they win this one, though, 16-10 Gamecocks. Connor Shaw, Marcus Lattimore get it done. Tennessee at Mississippi State. Finally, the Bulldogs face a quality opponent in a Tennessee team that's pretty good. Not great. They're pretty good, though. Will it be their first fall? I think it's going to be their first fall. I like Tyler Bray to win this one for his team, 24-20. Wisconsin at Purdue. This will decide the leaders division. Purdue has played sloppy football against the Wolverines and had some bad luck too. But the Badgers beat up on a very weak Illinois team. They haven't looked very good on offense. So I like Purdue. I think Wisconsin doesn't play well, but they don't play very well on the road, and I don't think they play well here. Can they still get to the championship game despite not playing well here? Yes, they can. But I like Purdue to win this one, 17-14. Kansas State at Iowa State. Cyclones have been a top 25 beater. They defeated TCU last year. couple years ago, they defeated Nebraska. They took Nebraska to overtime. The next year, then they defeated Oklahoma State. The next year, this team can beat top 25 teams. Can they beat Kansas State and Colin Klein? No, I think Optimus Klein gets it done. He carries his team, and I like them to win this one in a very, very close one. This one's a toss-up for me, to tell you the truth, but I like Colin Klein. He is the difference maker. 28-27, Kansas State. Fresno State at Boise State. The Broncos are finally going to have somebody that's going to test them. You know, they got tested by an okay BYU team. They haven't looked very good. They lost to a Michigan State team that's looked pretty average. And I don't know how they're still ranked. I think the Bulldogs come in here, take care of business. They smashed Colorado. They hung around with Oregon. And I think they're going to squeak one out against the Broncos on the blue turf, 17-13. Sorry about that. Fresno State Bulldogs. West Virginia at Texas Tech. After back-to-back emotional wins for West Virginia, will they fall against a Texas Tech team that is going to be pissed off after they lost to Oklahoma and they got blown out by Oklahoma? And I think that West Virginia is not going to play very well for the first quarter. They're going to come out slow. Texas Tech's going to come out fighting. And Geno Smith puts it together, and they win this one. It's going to be really close, though. This is going to be a fight, no question about it. But I like Geno Smith to get his team to win 45-41 in a very good game. Vanderbilt will host Florida, as the Florida has finally, maybe they've gotten a week off. They played Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU. They can't take the Commodores lightly. This is a team that has played pretty well against top 25 teams, but despite getting dismantled by Georgia, I'm going to take the Gators, but they do come out really slow in this one, 17-9. Gators win. Bama at Missouri. Missouri still has not gotten their first win in the SEC. They were defeated by Vanderbilt at home. And I think they're going to get smashed in this one. The Tide proclaim their dominance, 41-10. Iowa at Michigan State. Michigan State has really sleptwalked through the first half of most of their games offensively, and the Hawkeyes have not looked impressive at all this year, despite smashing a Minnesota team that only won 3 games last year. The road is not a friendly place for Big Ten teams. And I like the Spartans to win this one with their defense and Le'Veon Bell carrying the rock, 23-13. A&M at Louisiana Tech. I don't think the Aggies have a whole lot to prove here. They are playing a ranked team in Louisiana Tech, but Louisiana Tech has a lot to prove here. Can they beat a pretty good team in A&M, even though they didn't show they were very good when they went and struggled against Ole Miss? And this is a bad defense that Ole Miss has, but Johnny Manziel really struggled, but he did pull it through, and that's all that matters. And I'm going to take Louisiana Tech. Call me crazy. I don't like Texas A&M on the road here. Louisiana Tech wins this one, and they've got a legitimate shot at going undefeated this year. They're not going to be a BCS buster, but they do win this one, 45-41, in what could be an interesting shootout. Thanks for watching. Check back next week. I could be putting up a video about whether Nebraska should think about firing Bo Pelini or if they should give him time like they did to Devaney and Tom Osborne. Thanks for watching. Go Big Red.